Welcome to Changing the Game, where we share leadership insights and inspiration from female professionals who are making a difference in their industry. Hello, everyone. My name is Duren, and today I'm joined by Heather Maxwell. Heather is a proven business leader and former scholarship basketball player. She enjoyed a successful corporate career with multiple Fortune 500 companies across industries. She's always been one to be an entrepreneur as well as an entrepreneur, and many roles she's taken on throughout her career were newly created. And in her most recent career chapter, she's a global strategy and insights consultant while building her own company, Next 5 Team. Heather is focused on growth, that's business and personal growth. And given our previous conversations, I'm really excited to chat with her today. Welcome, Heather.
Thank you, Jordan. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here. As I mentioned, so excited to chat with you. Heather has amazing experience. I mentioned for anyone that has interest in being an entrepreneur in the future or has aspirations in line with those, this is a must listen. So Heather, so excited to have you share your story. If you could just kick us off right away, take us on your journey to becoming a collegiate athlete. Give us the backstory.
Whew, that is a backstory. So, I would say early on, I just was always competitive. Like everything was a game. I was trying to figure out what the rules were, how to win, but always working hard. It really didn't matter what context. I was just always putting in extra effort. I actually reached out to my brother to answer this question too. And he was like, we were always just adventurous, like high energy, trying to just experience so many things. And I'm like, yeah, that's true. I mean, we weren't really sitting around reading about it. We were out doing it and creating things. And I guess if you kind of parlay that into, becoming a collegiate athlete, I started organized sports late. I didn't play organized sports until late in middle school, high school for basketball. But I was always playing sports. And so it was the unorganized kind, right? It was where we were the players, we were the refs, we were the coaches, we were the everything. They were brutal drafts. There was no one dividing us for teams. We were dividing ourselves with drafts. So, just a lot of reps, a lot of hours playing and fine tuning, and then figuring out how to do that, once the uniforms were passed out and you were trying to make the team. I think becoming a collegiate athlete is so different now. I was graduating high school in 95. And, in that time, I was getting letters for cross country and track. Then I was getting offers for basketball. And then I finished with starting to get offers for softball, but I'd already signed with basketball. Yeah. So it was a little bit of a different time, multi-sport athlete. And I think a lot of it was just, improving. Obviously, winning can help. Stats can help. But at the end of the day, if the coach came and didn't see the character or the integrity in that athlete, that could end any kind of opportunity. So it was really trying to bring it all together, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's an interesting piece. You mentioned starting sports a little bit later. That seems to be a common theme with some guests on the show.
Really?
Actually, yeah. Surprisingly, I talked to Alexis Nugent last week. She started playing her sport her freshman year of high school. And usually,
yeah,
athletes are starting super young now. And so it seems like there's maybe an underlying characteristic of determination and work ethic underneath there that's helped a lot of our guests succeed, not only in their sport, but later in life too. So you went on to play collegiate basketball. And then, so tell us what that was like and how you transitioned out of your sport while you were playing.
Oh yeah. So I signed with the University of Indianapolis, it was Division II. I grew up in Champaign, Illinois. So to go 2 hours east into a bigger city, Indianapolis, it was kind of a perfect fit for me. They had a great business school. I loved the team and the coaches. It was just a nice next move for me. I had chances to go to bigger Division I schools, but I kind of felt like, well, I might sit a little bit. I want to get in and play. I want to make a difference. So a little bit more of a bigger fish, smaller pond experience there. And that's kind of a theme throughout my career, like finding those smaller ponds to be a bigger fish, have a bigger impact, and then go find a bigger opportunity where, you're one of many, but you're learning such different skills. It's a different experience. And then kind of coming back to something smaller and having a bigger impact. So shifting throughout. But yeah, so signing with the University of Indianapolis, it was great. Really enjoyed my experience. Freshman year, think I was like second on our team in scoring, second in rebounding. Like, it was a good year. We were winning. I was in the best shape of my life. It was the end of summer between my freshman and sophomore year, heading into sophomore season. And then I had a knee injury. I was just an open gym. We were playing and felt my knee kind of give out. It felt weird. I'd never really had a major injury in my career. And I got up and I ran down the court and chased down a ball. And then I really crumpled. And I thought, oh no, okay, I can't move. Like, my knee's not moving now. And then, I ended up thinking like, oh, maybe I tore my ACL. Like, I see this on TV and we'd had him on my team. And sure enough, I go to the doctor thinking like, oh gosh, I'm going to be out for the season, but I'm in the best shape of my life. I'm the strongest I've ever been, the lowest body fat I've ever had. Like, I was hitting all the marks, right? And then this happened. Like, this is awful. And I'm thinking, oh, I'll be out for a season. That's bad enough, right?
Yeah.
Well, then I go into surgery and come back out and I find out, yeah, actually you're not going to be out for the season. Like, you're going to be out of basketball for the rest of your life. I mean, that hits you like a ton of bricks at 19.
Yeah.
Basketball had been so much for me. It was a place to escape. It was a place where I knew the rules. Like, we all had a uniform. We were all on the same team. We all played by the same rules. It was clear who won and lost. Hard work would always pay off. And now I'm in this situation where I can't rehab myself out of it. I can't hard work myself out of it. I can't really do anything about it now. I had chipped a bone off the end of my knee. So that was tough. I don't even know how long that recovery really was emotionally, but it was tough.
Yeah. That's devastating. Like, as athletes, we all know that our career will inevitably end.
Yeah.
But for it to end on something that's not on your terms.
Yeah, it was really tough. And I think back and, most people, when you ask them about something that happened in their lives, they will say what I'm going to say. It was probably a blessing in disguise, because as a Division II basketball player, your chances of going pro or playing overseas are very, very small. But I was living in the gym. Okay. Now, it wasn't that I was neglecting school. I was getting A's. I was doing fine. But I would say that I was more, competing in the classroom, like checking the boxes, getting the good grades, than really using that opportunity as, the bridge into my next career. And so once that happened, it really opened my eyes, because now I had to focus that passion somewhere else. And what was it? Well, it was figuring out how to win in the business world in my next career. So it was a lot of networking, school. I had a different lens on for those next 3 years. I wanted to get great grades, sure, but it was more about, okay, how can I learn this and then apply it? What is this going to do for me in the, real world?
Yeah. Yeah. That networking piece and deciding, okay, maybe this piece is not there for me anymore in my life, but redirecting that energy into your future.
Yeah.
So you decided to redirect your energy into your future in business. You ended up eventually transitioning from undergrad after you graduated to studying at Notre Dame.
Yes.
So what did you study there? What was that transition like?
So Notre Dame I will say it was like my first big girl job. The one where you go, oh, wow, like, I feel like I kind of made it. It was for a marketing assistant role, and it was a newly created role. The women's basketball team had been winning under Hall of Fame coach Muffet McGraw for a while, and attendance was good. It was in like the top 30, but it was, despite winning, it was kind of stalling out, and they really wanted to energize those efforts. So when you interview for a role and it's marrying the sport you love with your discipline in school, I thought, I didn't even know these roles existed. This is crazy. Well, it was new. But the whole idea of that role was, okay, increase women's basketball attendance. And I was there 5 years. We had really successful seasons. We ended up moving from, I think we were 26th in attendance to number 9. And, they've maintained that. Like, they've stayed in the top 10, if not higher, ever since. And so it was a very rewarding role that also then transitioned into becoming director of basketball operations. So then I was in charge of the marketing still, but I was also running the summer camps on campus. I was working with the coaching staff on all recruiting materials and even attending some events. So it was a really great time, a really great jump start to my career.
Yeah, you were really on the precipice of the focus on fan engagement and attendance for women's sports, and especially as we move more into a digital era. And you mentioned in a previous conversation that you were able to help increase women's basketball attendance by 300%. So what lessons, I'm curious, did you take from your time in marketing promotions at Notre Dame that you continue to apply to your career today? And maybe we can get into that deeper as we go through your career trajectory, but anything top of mind for now.
Yeah, I mean, top of mind, I think, you learn the P's. Sometimes there's four, sometimes there's seven. It depends on who teaches you of marketing. And one thing I knew going into that role is we had a really good product. The team was winning. The coach was phenomenal. She had been there for a while. It looked like she was going to stay there. She was Notre Dame through and through. So we had a really great product to build from. And then it was a matter of, okay, but why are people coming to the games? And I spent a lot of time, despite being young and not really necessarily having been trained in that specific area, I spent a lot of time with the current fans. I sat with them in the stands and listened to how did they start coming to games? Why do they come? What keeps them from coming sometimes? What do you think would get other people to come? And even figuring out, like, what did they do before games, after games? Like, what was their whole journey? Even spending time with them sometimes after games. We had, a big win or a tough loss. It was like, oh, I think they're going to be at such and such a place. I'll go meet up with them there. And, that means a lot. You're building relationships. People are feeling heard, but you're also unlocking maybe the reasons why or something you can tap into to get more fans. And that's really what it was all about, was listening to how people got there and then trying to build other programming and build that experience to meet their needs.
Yeah. Following that customer journey, or really just building those relationships and knowing what they care about at the end of the day.
Exactly.
That's amazing. So you had a great start to your career then at Notre Dame, and then you transitioned to get your PhD. So I'm curious what the focus of your research was during your PhD and how it's continued to influence the direction of your career.
Sure. Yeah. And before I left Notre Dame, I did get my master's in applied psychology, which was a little bit of a bridge then to go, what next? Neither of my parents went to college. They graduated from high school. So this wasn't a thing in my family, going to school, let alone now I'm leaving Notre Dame, leaving a great job. I'll never forget my dad going, what are you doing? You have a dream job and you're leaving to go to school. You're going to be poor. And I'm like, yeah, you're not wrong. And what you're saying is very scary.
Yeah. Thanks, Dad. Yeah.
He had a point, and parents need to help you constructively challenge things and think. But I had earned a research assistantship to go to the University of Minnesota, and the University of Minnesota is phenomenal. My research assistantship was with the Tucker Center for Research on Girls and Women in Sport. I was able to work with a legend, Dr. Mary Jo Kane. She really was instrumental in just my development, not only as a professional, but just in translating learning into action. She really is a legend. So, I get there and my dissertation was focused on, it's kind of interesting to think now. I would really love to replicate it. It was looking at the 2006-2007 collegiate basketball season. And it was looking at ESPN.com, comparing women's college basketball coverage versus men's college basketball coverage for the entire season.
Interesting.
So I looked at quantity, how much was actually provided, and I looked at qualitatively what were themes, what was similar, what was different. This is a space, right? New media in 06-07 where it's kind of unlimited, right? The internet's limitless. And so here we are potentially on an equal playing field, but we know there's resources behind the scenes. People still need to write things, cover things, right? AI is not exactly there like it is now. So it was really interesting to compare this. And the good news is as far as photographs between both men's and women's college basketball, they were very similar in quantity, and they were similar in being in uniform, being on the court, and being in action, which historically female athletes had been shown more in a performative way outside of sports, right? Maybe lots of makeup, no uniform, just out of context. But that had gone away. So that was an improvement. And interestingly, on the articles, there were more men's articles than women, which wasn't surprising, but the areas that were covered were very different. And so there was more coverage for men on athlete health. There was more coverage on rule breakers, whether it would be coaches or men's players. Do I think that there were more injuries in men's versus women's? And do I think there's more rule breakers in men's versus women? No. I think that was all tied to, at that time, gambling, right? Betting on games. I need to know who's going to play, who's going to be impacting the score. I mean, imagine now, right? Gambling wasn't even nowhere near as big as it is now. So I would really love to replicate it and see if that held true. Those were the two biggest areas, I think.
That's so interesting, Heather. I wasn't even thinking about gambling as you were talking about that. And then when you said it, I was like, oh, duh. Like that makes so much sense. I'm curious, have you seen, or what's your hunch? You want to replicate the study, but like, what's your hunch? Have you seen a shift or?
I think the hunch would be there would be more coverage overall. I think it would be tough to try to pinpoint because media is so fragmented now comparatively, but I think it would be interesting to try to compare apples to apples on ESPN.com and see. I would suspect that there's more for both, and I would suspect that there's more injury and rule breaker coverage between men's and women's, and there's probably different themes, right? Like there was another theme like Coach is King, where they really focused on the coach, and that was a bigger deal for men's coaches than women's coaches. I think that shifted too. Like think of the Kim Mulkey press that's out there. Think of the Dawn Staley, Gino Auriemma, Lisa Bluter, et cetera. Like, I think that's shifted a bit too.
Yeah, I love it. So you did some amazing, really cool research when you were at the University of Minnesota. How did that lead you into roles, these senior level roles then you were able to hold at General Mills, Conagra, Sazerac? Can you take us on that journey?
Oh, Jordan, this could be its own little, I'm going to give you the little mini TED Talk of it because it's like one of my favorite keynote topics for speaking. But, I'm wrapping up my degree at Minnesota and I'm not quite sure what's next. I could maybe be a professor, but I really wasn't feeling that was going to be my route. But I didn't know what was next. I was looking for that next growth opportunity. A woman guest speaks in it was an MBA class within my PhD program. She guest speaks in a consumer behavior class, and I was loving this class, shocking. And, Vivian was speaking, and I go up to her after class and I go, wow, I had no idea that General Mills had, such a large insights or research group. And she said, well, do you have any plans right now? And I go, oh, I don't. She's like, do you like Thai food? Jordan, I'd never had Thai in my life. So I was like, yes.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
Yes.
I love it.
So I end up going around the corner with her chatting about opportunities at General Mills, trying to find the closest thing to cashew chicken that I can.
Yeah, the mild on the spice rating. Yeah.
And, I mean, the rest is kind of history because then I end up writing my dissertation during my first year at General Mills, end up working there nearly 3 years, have a fantastic experience, really learning the ropes. It was such a wonderful experience, helping me bridge what I had learned in the classroom to then actioning against that in the real world. And then, you just keep learning and growing and performing. And then I end up going to Conagra Brands in Chicago. I took a promotion there and getting back a little closer to home in Illinois. And, then I end up leading half of the insights group for Conagra Brands. And again, I'm staying in the food area. Now I've been in the food area for about 9 years. It was great. But then I was recruited to build the insights and analytics team at Sazerac Company, which is a large spirits company, global company, but mostly volume in the US. And that was such a wonderful challenge, learning the Alk Bev business, and then also building a team, building a department from scratch. It was just such a great experience.
Yeah, I'm sure you had so many learnings then from those experience. And that's an understatement probably, but
Yeah,
so many learnings and consumer insights really that helped shape your work in sports and fan engagement and really what you're doing now. So can you share a little bit more about that as well?
absolutely. Like, when you're working in corporate America, there are typically a number of brands under the umbrella of the company. And some of those brands are big behemoth brands, right? They're the type of brands where you're like, oh, this brand can't fail. So how do we keep it strong? How do we keep it healthy? Like a Pillsbury, right? Or a Betty Crocker or a Yoplait. These really big ones. And then sometimes a brand is really large, but it goes through struggles and it needs a little bit more renovation. It needs some help. Slim Jim was huge with Macho Man Randy Savage, and then it kind of fell off a cliff when Jack Links came around. So
Yeah.
we had to renovate that brand. Well, that takes different work, right? Because you're trying to figure out kind of what happened and how do we fix it. And then there's also times where a company or a school will say, well, we need to create a new brand. It's kind of from scratch. Like we need to enter this category. We need to be able to play in healthy snacking, for instance. What does that look like? And so there's lots of different business challenges, and you're learning how to address those. And those brands all have different size budgets. They have different people, different characters working within. They have different brand assets that you could use. Maybe everyone really knows that logo and you really want to leverage that. Or maybe there's a brand equity character like a, Macho Man that you can use too, or maybe that's no longer available. But how does that translate into sports? It's very, very similar because you have products, you have brands within your men's and women's basketball teams, your football, your hockey, your volleyball, keep going. And they're in varying degrees too. Some are more established than others. And
Mhm.
they have sometimes overlapping consumers, but sometimes they have different consumers as well. And it's still a very similar process with slightly different tools and different P's, right? That product looks a little bit different. But you're still leveraging all of those frameworks and skill sets to solve business challenges and help accelerate growth.
Yeah, that's an interesting point with the overlapping demographics or fan base rather in
Mhm.
each sport and how that's transferable from your work in the food space and consumer insights. So, but I want to get more into your work at Next 5 and fan engagement, but before we do that, you had a post today on LinkedIn that made me laugh this morning. So I just I want to touch on it. You had mentioned a post on strategy and insults in quote. So if you could just share a little bit of your learnings from working in strategy and insights that inspired that post.
Sure. Jordan, I was prepping for this session with you today, and I typed something out. I was like, "Oh, strategy and insults," and I keep going, and then I go back and read, and I go, "Oh my gosh!" And when that happens, I have to pause and go, "Why would I type strategy and insults?"
Yeah.
I've never typed strategy and insults in my life. It's like that's kind of funny though, because sometimes when you're uncovering, learning about a business, how it's performing, what's working, what's maybe not working, the challenges, you have to deliver bad news sometimes. And while that is typically their insights, sometimes it can come across as insulting, right?
Mhm.
This is what I work on. This is my passion. This is my brand. This is my business. And you're telling me that consumers think these negative things about my brand? It's like telling someone their baby's ugly. Like that is never going to go over well. So yeah, it made me laugh. It made me pause for a second to go, oh, maybe people sometimes think insights people are strategy and insults. Like I need to think about that.
I thought it was interesting and it helped me relate it to my own career as well. It's always tough getting hard feedback. It sucks. Like your
Yeah.
ego kind of gets in the way. I've been delivered feedback. I mean, everyone has, and it's kind of I've had to remind myself to take a pause and say, this is for the betterment of my career and me as a person. And so I thought it was so incredibly relatable, not only for brands and companies, but for us as people.
Completely. And the thing about it is you can learn something, you can take something in and you can let it bounce off. You can absorb it You can choose to action on it or not. I mean, that's the power of the learning, right? Is we get to choose how we interpret it and what we do next.
Yeah. I love it. Thank you for sharing on that LinkedIn post. I know I threw a little curveball at you with that one, but so I want to get into what you do at Next 5. You focus on increasing in-person attendance for collegiate athletics while complementing, this digital fandom world we live in.
Yeah.
So can you just talk about the inspiration behind founding Next 5 team and the market gap that you are really seeking to address there?
Sure. Yeah, I think the gap, it started from having sat in that seat, right? Where the whole goal is, well, you need to increase attendance and here's your budget. No matter how big or small, that person sitting in that seat has a lot of responsibility. And there's always a grade, right? You walk out and you see if you did well or not. There is no hiding, there's no pretending. The box score is always showing the attendance. Like there's always a score. And so for me, having been in that world, been in that seat, that pressure, left, gathered other skills, gathered other tools that then to come back and help people in that seat, that was really the impetus. And it was happening around a time when, I mean, so this was 2.5 years ago, and women's sports has been on a trajectory. And to me, the playbook, if you will, that we use, we're helping men's and women's teams. We're helping athletic department with their priority sports primarily. But the frameworks, the plays, all the things can be replicated across sports. It's a way of thinking and a way of being strategic about how you're using every dollar, every hour you have, because we know there's not enough hours in the day to get all the work done that happens in the athletic departments. There's just not. No matter how big your team is, there's just not, because the bigger the team gets, the higher the expectations get. It's
Right.
just like any workplace, right? So that was really the beginning of founding Next 5 team. And the whole idea was, we'll meet you where you are. Some of our clients have very little data, but they want to get started thinking in a data kind of way. It's like, great. We have a lot of best practices. We have a lot of knowledge. We'll start wherever you are. And if you have a lot of data, we'll dig into that too. We love data. But it's not just about learning for learning's sake, right? We need to find the right learning to then translate that into your growth strategy. So then we see the upticks that we're seeing with our clients.
Yeah, I'm curious too what you think. I know you work with a variety of sizes. You said you meet your customers where you are, the athletic departments where they are. But what are some of the biggest challenges that you've seen athletic departments face today in terms of like their fan engagement, and how are you helping them overcome those?
I think the schools, there tends to be a focus on, well, we need to get sponsorship dollars and we need to sell tickets. It's very tangible. And I
Right.
get it. What gets left out is the in between, which is that game experience and the hook. So someone's selling a ticket. Yes, they can say this team is playing this team and it's at 7 o'clock, and maybe we can give you a discounted ticket. But in a world where it's really an attention economy, right? There's a lot of different options to serve a lot of different consumers' needs. So let's go to the winter. If I have 2 hours and I'm looking for 2-ish, right? And it's a Saturday afternoon, and I'm trying to find something for my family to do that's not going to break the bank, that's going to be warm because I'm in the Midwest, that's going to be fun. Maybe we'll create some memories. Think of all the different options for that. We could go out to eat. We could go to a trampoline park. We could just walk around the mall and maybe, get some ice cream or something. We could go to a movie. We could go to an arcade, like keep going.
Mhm.
So how do we get your school and your event on their radar? Because they have to be aware to then be able to consider it. And then the ultimate is the conversion into a ticket. So it's not always just basketball or just football or just volleyball. What else can you build in so you're opening up this experience? It's interesting, maybe motivating a broader audience, because that's going to increase your fan base. It's not just going to be hardcore basketball fans.
Yeah.
Bigger than that. So what are we going to do? Well, my last client recently, we had a huge Taylor Swift night. It didn't cost them that much, but we had to make the event bigger, and we ended up doubling their attendance.
Yeah.
Ticket people had something to talk about. the sponsors wanted to be in on it because now there's more eyeballs, more butts in the seats, more fans. And all of that helps everybody, right? More parking, more concessions purchased, more tickets purchased, and maybe you'll come back. Maybe you bought merch. Like there's a lot of benefit to that.
Absolutely. The attention economy, that's such a huge point you mentioned. So I'm curious, since we're in this attention economy, how do you see the future of collegiate sports and fan engagement evolving?
Yeah, I do. I think there's nothing that will truly replace in-person experiences, right? We learned that in COVID. We saw the cardboard cutouts in the stands. It was awful. It was awful for the players, the coaches, even the fans watching on TV. It was just awful. But I do think it will become more integrated. So you'll see a lot more, and it's happening already, where there's more digital integration with even the game day experience, whether it's QR codes, whether it's virtual things that you're able to see. Definitely more engagement with the team, the coaches, the material, behind the scenes things. I mean, content is so king right now, and it will be for the foreseeable future. But those things have to work together, because I don't want you just consuming online.
Right.
That limits a lot of connectivity, a lot of emotional bond, and it really limits a lot of revenue as well.
Yeah. Heather, this episode has been so amazing. I know we are over time right now, and I would love to just roll forever. Like, this has been so awesome. So I just have one final question for you to wrap the episode. What advice would you give to listeners who one day aspire to found their own company?
Oh yeah. I think the biggest thing is collecting experiences. So you know what people are missing, because you're building something against a pain point. Can be a love, but it really needs to be against a pain point. And then also, finding someone who's a couple steps ahead of you that can help you build your business faster. And that could be from processes, it could be from apps, software, you name it. But there's always someone that's a couple steps ahead of you. You don't have to recreate the wheel. Find that network of people that can help.
Amazing. There's always a case study out there on somebody who maybe has done something a little similar.
Yes.
And you can lean into their expertise too.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Heather. This was so wonderful. Can I encourage anyone to connect with you on LinkedIn, reach out if they have questions?
Absolutely. Would love it.
Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for listening. I will see you next week, same time, 1 p.m. Eastern. Again, wonderful chatting with you today, Heather, and I hope you have a great day.
Thanks for having me, Jordan. It was great.
Thank you.